The first video was Disney Channel crossovers, the second video was Nickelodeon crossovers, so I might as well make this a trilogy and cover Cartoon Network crossovers. Let's do this.
I'm the biggest hero in the world.
I'm the biggest hero in the world.
I have the power of over 1 million aliens.
I can turn into a living weapon.
I'm gonna turn you into a living punching bag.
Hey, you're the one who stepped on my turf. I'm gonna take you down.
No, you're not.
Yes, I am. Stop it. You stop it.
2 big heroes, 1 epic battle. Ben 10, Generator X, Heroes United. The 1-hour event premieres Friday at 7, 6 Central, only on Cartoon Network.
Why does my jacket smell like bananas?
I said in one of my last videos that there are just some crossovers that for one reason or another had to happen. And in that same video, I name dropped Ben 10 and Generator Rex as one of them. Both shows were action oriented, both aired at the exact same time and on the same night, and to top it all off, they were even made by the same people, a man of action. This was like the iParty with Victorious, but for Cartoon Network. I remember this being a huge deal, especially as someone who was a fan of both shows. I would 100% remember watching this episode live as it aired, and every time I go back to rewatch it, I always end up getting just as excited as I did back then. Ben 10 Generator Rex, Heroes United, premiered on November 25th, 2011. However, unlike some crossovers, despite it being a two-parter, it's not a case of one episode aired as a Ben 10 episode and the other aired as a Generator X episode. No, the entire thing aired as a Generator X event, right smack in the middle of the show's third and final season. Which is great because this show always just looked a lot better than the Ultimate Alien Force era of Ben 10. Because of the fact that this aired as part of the Generator Rex series, a show that was relatively serialized, there are some things that are heavily tied to the ongoing story the show was trying to tell. But because of the fact that I want as many people as possible to still watch this fantastic piece of a show, I won't go over everything, as some things might be considered spoilers. I also don't want to bore anyone who just casually watched the show from time to time and hasn't seen it in years with a bunch of unnecessary details. I also haven't watched the show in about 6 years and low-key forgot some of that stuff anyway, so it all works out in the end. What I will, however, do is give you all a brief rundown on the general premise of the show for anyone unfamiliar. One day, there was this explosion that happened, causing these machines called nanites to take shelter within all living organisms. Most humans have these nanites within them, but only a percentage of them end up turning into these things called evos, which are basically mutated humans. Rex, on the other hand, is a special case because not only can he use these nanites to make machines, but he can also cure these evos and turn them back into humans. He also works for this agency called Providence, whose main goal is to stop any destruction caused by these evos, partnering up with Agent 6, who is basically Batman with blades, Bobo Haha, who is basically Diddy Kong, and Dr. Holiday, who is basically the mom of the group. As for the actual story, this big ol' energy portal appears in Manhattan, causing everyone in the city to panic. So Rex and the rest of his crew go to investigate it, only for them to be met with something unlike anything they've experienced before. Something otherworldly.
Yeah, you just made a humongous mistake.
I got chills, man. I got chills. Anyway, we get this cool special intro for this episode that combines both elements from Generator X and Ben 10, almost similar to the Jimmy Timmy Power Hour intros. Like a lot of instances where two superheroes meet each other for the first time, we get a fight sequence between Rex and Ben, mainly coming from the fact that neither have any idea what's going on or who each other are, with Rex thinking Ben is an Evo and Ben thinking Rex is an alien, since that's typically all they deal with on their respective shows. One thing I've always noticed about this show, and I did just mention it earlier, is how significantly better it looks than Ben 10 Alien Force and Ultimate Alien. Like, I really do like those shows, especially Alien Force, but man, they had some really bland visuals. Bro, look at this shot right here, man. This is just horrible. All these PNGs in the crowd. Generator Rex, for the most part, doesn't have that issue, though. And so because of that, not only do Ben and all his aliens move smoothly in the show, but they also all just look better overall. We haven't seen fight scenes involving Ben 10 characters look this good since the original show, and we wouldn't again until Omniverse. Bro, look at how detailed Wrath is, and the constant glow on the Omnitrix too. Are you kidding me? At some point, Ben turns back into his human form and introduces himself, but is confused when no one recognizes him. On his world, he's a famous superhero. Everyone and their mom knows him. But here, everyone kind of just looks at him like he's some regular kid. Which, considering Ben's ego around this time, thanks Ultimate Alien writers, is the first thing that makes him realize that he might not be in Kansas anymore. Rex and crew take both Ben and an unconscious and injured Agent 6 back to their HQ, with Rex blaming Ben for what happened to him. Ben explains that while doing a TV interview, he saw a hole in the sky and went to investigate, thus leading him to Rex's world. And after further testing, Holiday reveals that considering how little nanites are in Ben's system, there's no way for him to be of this world. One of the more interesting aspects of this episode is, of course, the interactions between Ben and Rex, taking the time to highlight their similarities and their differences. The one scene from earlier where they both are trying to save the people of Manhattan while also bickering is a great example of this, because although they're both obviously on the same side, Rex is more impulsive and emotionally charged, always doing whatever comes to his head first instead of thinking things through. Even though it's quite irrational for him to think this way, as soon as Agent 6 gets hurt, he immediately puts the blame on Ben, not acknowledging that things like this just happen in the battlefield and there's not always one person to blame. Ben, being the older hero and having more experience, is a lot more logical and patient. Since the age of 10, he's experienced a lot of stuff that has made him understand the importance of poise in situations like these. And so throughout the episode, we see him positively impact Rex and almost in a way become a vet to him. Another thing they have in common is like how Rex has Agent 6, who he's worried sick about right now, Ben has Kevin, Gwen, and Grandpa Max back home in his world. And his parents, which he kind of rarely mentions. And once Rex starts to understand this a little more, he agrees to help Ben out, as Ben also agrees to help out Rex. With both shows being made from the same staff, the storyline manages to pull from both shows in a way that feels organic and not forced. It also allows for Ben to be written in a manner that's accurate to his respective show, and in some ways even better, to be honest. Hard to get a character wrong when you're the person that made them. We see why it was these two shows specifically that cross over once we meet up with Cesar, who is Rex's older brother. And I gotta admit, as much as I love this episode, I was never a big fan of its villain. But basically, to give you the cliff notes, those nanites that I mentioned earlier were originally made to save people from bad health. Cesar created this thing called the Alpha Nanite, which was invented to control all the other ones, who in simpler terms ends up becoming Ultron. Alpha wanted to take shelter within living organisms as it needed a host. But Cesar couldn't let that happen, so he decided to send it to another universe. That universe being the Null Void. Somehow, Palpatine returned, and now his goal is to suck everything containing nanites out from within each individual organism. The thing is, bro just keeps getting bigger and bigger as the episode goes on, and never actually becomes more interesting. The Generator Rex in the past has managed to create some compelling villains, so this one was a little disappointing and generic, despite its somewhat complex origin. Fortunately though, the chemistry between Rex and Ben is more than enough to hide this one flaw that I find in the episode, because everything else is pretty baller. As the episode progresses, we see more and more of what I mentioned earlier. Rex reaches some pretty rash conclusions, but Ben offers a different perspective that might be more accurate to what's going on. They also start trading origin stories, as we get small little cameos from 10-year-old Ben, his roster of aliens, which is infamously filled to the brim with animation errors, and Max, Gwen, and Kevin, aka the rest of the plumbers.
Plumbers? I thought Providence was a dumb name.
I never understood this line, because Providence is a really cool name.
You're watching the series premiere of Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, and stay tuned for the series premiere of Generator Rex up next. Back to the series premiere of Ben 10 Ultimate Alien, and stay tuned for the series premiere of Generator Rex up next.
The last 16 minutes or so is just pure action, not gonna lie. Ben and Rex try multiple times to take down the big bad, but each time, no matter what combination of their skill sets they use, Omega or Alpha, whatever he's going by nowadays, has a counter for each attack. At some point, he even manages to tap into the Ultimatrix to absorb some of the abilities of Ben's aliens. This dude trying to be Kevin so bad. One thing that I really like about this episode is how it managed to feel important for both Ben 10 and Generator Rex. Even though the entire special is a Generator Rex episode, the Ben 10 franchise would end up forever being altered by this event, albeit in a relatively minor way, with a whole new alien being introduced, Shock Squatch, who would later go on to appear in Omniverse. I'm telling you, crossovers are typically at their best when the creators of both shows are heavily involved. A bonus point if they actually share the same creator. But even as cool as this was, I'd argue the coolest moment of the episode, animation error aside, is when Ben turned into Upgrade to augmentate all of Rex's weapons. Son, do y'all remember when they added this version of Rex to TKO, that Cartoon Network robot fighting game? I actually just found out a way to still play TKO too. I might have to start live streaming soon. Stay tuned. Man, covering this episode makes me feel like such a kid, bro. I love the fact that I can still get amused by stuff like this. Rex and Upgrade start going like pew pew pew, bam bam bam, vroom, vroom, shing, vroom. A bunch of other stuff that I don't feel like explaining happens, and they're able to take down the big bad. Ben turns into Upchuck to take the Alpha Nanite back into the Null Void, and they all live happily ever after.
Wow. That's just... wow.
Even Agent 6, who has clearly recovered from his coma. He and Rex exchange dialogue that, although alludes to the two titular characters likely not meeting up again thanks to the infinite Earths out there, still leaves room for potential crossovers in the future. That, I guess we kinda get, twice even. Heroes United, in my opinion, is the gold standard of cartoon crossovers. I'd even go as far to say that it's the best crossover that I've covered on this channel so far, and it's not even close. Does nostalgia play a part in this? A little, but like objectively speaking, this episode does just about everything a crossover episode needs to do, and probably a little beyond that. Literally, the only issue I have with this episode is that I just didn't find the villain to be an interesting enough threat to take on both Rex and Ben. It's cliche, but man, I would have loved to have seen a Ben 10 villain team up with a Generator Rex villain, man. Everything else about this episode is great though. I said it before, but even though this is a Gen Rex episode, it doesn't necessarily feel like a Generator Rex episode that just kind of has Ben 10 in the background. Almost like that horrible Supergirl and Flash crossover we got like 10 years ago, where Flash gets knocked out by lightning for like the rest of the battle sequence, and Supergirl has to do everything herself. No, Ben really be boxing in this episode. I love how they utilize all of his aliens. If I'm not mistaken, the cooldown feature was more or less non-existent by this point, so he basically just starts spamming aliens throughout the entire special. Even a couple that we never got a chance to see during the Ultimate Alien Force era, like Upgrade and Accelerate. The latter of which literally couldn't appear because the show just didn't have a big enough budget to animate a character with a tail. I know, sad, right? But with Man of Action spearheading this episode, we truly got to experience Ben at his peak. We also got to experience some great interactions between Rex and Ben that truly represent who both characters are very well. Not even referring to the multiple team-up moves we received like Upgrade Rex with the Cannonbolt scene, but throughout the episode we truly get to see how Ben, the more experienced hero, rubs off on Rex, creating a dynamic that is almost instantly enjoyable for fans of both shows. I really wish we were able to get a crossover between the two again in Omniverse. I mean, the Secret Saturdays episode was cool and all, but man, imagine if we got all three of them, even throwing a little Symbionic Titan in there. Unite the big four of Cartoon Network original action shows, at least from this era. It was also just great to see these two characters interact because they typically don't team up with other heroes like them. Ben has a squad of people, but all of them in some way or another are connected to him and are a part of the story, perhaps even origin. And Rex is the same. To see two heroes from completely different backgrounds unite like this and bond over things that both make them alike and different was something that we genuinely didn't get until now. It allows for more interesting dynamics. This episode also doesn't waste any opportunities. They both wear jackets, so naturally they swap them at some point. Upgrade improves machines, Rex builds machines, obviously they do something with that, and they even take time to highlight the differences between their worlds. Aliens and parallel worlds in the Rex universe were thought of as impossible, but then Ben showing up quickly debunked both. And then obviously Ben had no idea what a nanite is. Man, I love both of these shows. Covering this episode was a lot of fun, and I'd love to cover more episodes like this at some point, whether it's on here or my second channel, which you should be subscribed to if you aren't already. Ben 10 is coming back, y'all. We getting a new comic, so make sure you show up for that. Support your local comic book stores, and hey, pick up a copy of the Dakota Incident while you're at it too, so we can get more static content in the future. I'm just plugging everything at this point. Alright, on to the next show.
One big day, 9 big movies, back to back to back. Next Monday, prepare yourself for a Cartoon Network original movie marathon. And then, all 5 episodes of Cartoon Network's Invaded in one massive miniseries event. One monster Memorial Day marathon. One enormous invasion. One day only. Next Monday, starting at 6 a.m. Cartoon Network.
Typically, I don't engage in the whole old stuff good, new stuff bad conversations. I try to be pretty open-minded on the good and bad of all eras. However, ever since the shift to the streaming era, especially when it comes to how kids watch their TV shows, there have been some things that have truly become a lost art. And one of those things, I feel, is the personalized programming of each individual channel. Less and less time has been put into making interstitials, bumpers, and idents feel unique. At one point, the powers that be of each network made sure that even when you weren't watching a specific television series, you were still entertained. This kind of effort also carried over into how certain shows were aired. Themed programming blocks were all the rage from the 90s to the 2010s. Sometimes studio heads and creatives would come up with special blocks or events meant to only air once that would put all the network's top shows temporarily under one umbrella for a specific event, occasionally with something connecting each episode that aired. Now granted, we know now as adults that this was just a way to air a whole bunch of commercials and even occasionally have special sponsors linked to the event. There's always a business reason for everything that's done. However, creatively, showrunners, even if begrudgingly, would use this as a time to make special moments for the kids watching, to really make it feel like all of their favorite shows were connected. And truly, I cannot think of a greater example than 2007's Cartoon Network Invaded crossover event. An event that aired in May, showcasing some of Cartoon Network's biggest shows as they all deal with extraterrestrial themed situations. Ironically, Ben 10, the network's only cartoon at the time that actually dealt with aliens on a consistent basis, was not included. The shows that were included, though, are Foster's, Ed, Edd and Eddy, My Gym Partner's a Monkey, Camp Lazlo, with it all ending with Billy and Mandy. It's so funny seeing Ed, Edd and Eddy lumped in with all of these shows. I'd be forgetting how long it aired. It's like when all the OGs left All That, but for whatever reason, Josh Server sticked around. It was mad out of place. So basically, Kraft reached out to Cartoon Network one day and wanted to do some sort of cross-promotion event featuring their shows. So CN told some of the head writers of their ongoing series at the time to make special episodes of each show, all tying into two main themes some way or another. Those two themes being aliens and cheese. It's well reported by now that most of the staff of these shows had no interest in doing this and were pretty much against the idea, but they kind of had no choice. And ironically, Kraft ended up pulling out of the deal, funny enough. But the event still aired anyway. The point of CN Invaded was to more or less tell one storyline across all of these shows, not just using aliens, but using the exact same ones. Which in a way would mean that all of these shows are in the same universe, but realistically, I highly doubt most of the creators of these shows view these episodes to be canon anyway, especially since typically aliens were not a part of these shows' respective universes. The event started on Friday, May 4th, 2007 with Foster's. Then one episode would air each subsequent Friday in May, making the event come to an end on the 28th with Billy and Mandy. Although each episode involved were largely just regular episodes of each show and not true crossovers, there were still nods and references that tied everything together, making it all feel connected. For example, in the Foster's episode, Frankie is seen shipping out some packages, all of which end up going to a character from one of the participating shows. The green one goes to Clam, the pink one goes to Adam, the blue one appears in Billy and Mandy, and the purple one goes out to the cul-de-sac kids, more specifically Jimmy. The connections don't just stop there though, as characters from other shows do end up making cameos elsewhere. Fred Fredberger appears in court in the Foster's episode, while the Eds appear on a newspaper in the Gym Partner episode. But Billy and Mandy goes a step further and actually has cutouts from shows both involved in the crossover and not involved, like Dexter and The Kids Next Door, the latter of which actually make a cameo during the credits of the event's alternate ending. I understand that the creators involved weren't the biggest fans of this event, and in some ways you can even feel it in some of the actual episodes, but man was this cool. This kind of ties back to what I mentioned earlier about the streaming era versus the cable era. Obviously, streaming does have its clear advantages. Being able to watch any show you want at any time without worrying about any commercials is something that I would have loved to have at the age of like 8. In some ways, and probably the most important ways at least in the context of kids' TV, the current generation might low-key have it better than previous ones. But like, think about the aura though. Once upon a time, all kids had was cable TV. That was their main way of watching their favorite TV shows and cartoons. It showed in the ratings, and so the people in charge of marketing and programming were very aware of that. And so each channel, whether it was Disney or Nick or Cartoon Network, even Boomerang, especially Boomerang, spent a lot of time perfecting everything that aired so that kids would keep watching. They had to make these things visually interesting. That's why bumpers and promos are so important when you think about it. If a show goes into a commercial break, a lot of the time that's when kids would leave the room or switch channels. But a kid might be more inclined to stay and sit through a bunch of ads and commercials if the commercials are sandwiched in between cool looking bumpers that feature, I don't know, Puffy Amayumi interacting with Courage, Blue singing a song with Laszlo, or whatever was going on in the Samurai Jack and Johnny Bravo bumper. Like, yeah, you might have to watch that annoying Shirley Temple commercial or whatever this was. But at least you would have something cool to look forward to when the channel came back. To get back on track, because I'm pretty sure I just rambled, the point that I was trying to make is that it is kind of sad that stuff like Cartoon Network Invaded or even Wish Gone and Miss don't really exist anymore. But it makes sense. Cable isn't as important to kids as it was even 10 to 15 years ago. More and more shows and movies are being sent to streaming because that's where the kiddies are, when they're not watching iShowSpeed or something. I don't blame them for not putting as much time into creating something that feels united and connected if there aren't any kids there to appreciate it. Nor do I feel like it is something that needs to get fixed. Times have changed, just the way life works. But hey, at least we'll always have YouTube and other services online to not only watch these things again if we're feeling nostalgic, but also YouTubers who choose to talk about them. So, you might want to subscribe, because, I be doing that stuff.
Guest stars. Some say your cartoon isn't cool without one. But only one cartoon is bold enough to have a whole nother cartoon as a guest star. Johnny Bravo. He's got cartoon connections and he's not too proud to use them.
I'll give you a Scooby snack.
He's checking his ego at the door and saying,
You understand what that dog says?
Johnny Bravo. Jeez. Don't let the name fool you.
Johnny Bravo, tonight at 11 on Cartoon Network.
Y'all ever have a TV show that you forgot you low-key really like? Like the kind of show that doesn't normally occupy space in your head, but when something reminds you of it, you instantly start smiling and reminiscing about it? Maybe that's just me, but regardless, Johnny Bravo is undoubtedly one of those shows. I've never gone through the entire series or anything, but even when I used to watch the show as a kid, and then when I'd come across episodes later in life, there was almost never a time where I didn't enjoy watching it. It's like actually a really good show. It's genuinely hilarious sometimes. One of the reasons why I like it so much is because of the fact that almost anything can happen in it, and it would feel natural. You can make just about any plot with Johnny and put him in any setting, and it would feel normal. He's met aliens, he's dated an antelope, he's met Don Knotts. There's an episode where he falls into a tub of hair gel and travels 500 years into the future. You can truly tell any type of story with Johnny Bravo. One of the greatest examples of this, though, is the Johnny Bravo crossover episode with Scooby-Doo, which, by the way, is one of 2 appearances that Scooby had in the first season alone. This was always a childhood favorite of mine. I've always had fond memories of this episode. However, I had no idea until this year that Johnny Bravo had a crossover with the Flintstones. I shouldn't have been surprised, as it's totally on brand for the show. I just had no idea it existed. So you know what? Since those episodes are only 11 minutes long, I've decided to cover both of them. It also helps that both are bangers too, so. A couple things worth noting, but a lot of the head writers of the 90s Cartoon Network shows are currently in their 50s, meaning when they were kids, Hanna-Barbera was really, really popular. So naturally, for a lot of them, it became a dream come true that not only would they have their own cartoons one day, but they'd also end up being some of the last creators to work for Hanna-Barbera Studios, as most CN shows from Dexter to Powerpuff Girls were technically still under that umbrella. And so because of this, you would be hard-pressed to find an old Cartoon Network show that didn't include some sort of reference to some sort of Hanna-Barbera-produced series, as you'll see later on in the video as well. I say all this to say, you can tell from the very beginning how much fun the Johnny Bravo staff had while making the episode of Bravo Doobie Doo, because not only do they get the chance to write some of their favorite childhood cartoons as adults, but they also get to merge them with the world of their own creation, putting a bit of a unique and modern spin on the characters. This is mainly only found in the dialogue though, as the episode itself does a great job at mimicking the old school Scooby-Doo art style, even starting it off with a special intro inspired by the series. I even just heard in an interview recently that Van Partible actually hunted down the original Scooby-Doo walking cycles in order to really nail this look. But basically, while en route to his aunt's house, Johnny's car breaks down, but fortunately for him, he gets spotted by the Scooby-Doo gang, who seemingly don't even understand what he's saying until he mentions something about his aunt living in some spooky house. This is such a well-crafted crossover because they could have easily just modernized the Scooby-Doo gang in a way that would have been appropriate for the 90s, but instead, they literally just took them straight out of the original show and plop them into Johnny Bravo. And that choice leads to some really funny scenes of Johnny trying to adapt to how time displaced and weird they are. Also, you already know what type of timing Johnny was on.
Don't worry, I don't bite.
Does she? Oh.
The gang decides to give Johnny a lift to his aunt's house, but once they see that something spooky might be going on, they decide to stay and investigate in classic Scooby-Doo fashion. Also in classic Scooby-Doo fashion, Scooby and Shaggy sneak off to find snacks, but encounter a creepy gardener who seemingly has taken shelter in Johnny's aunt's house. Also in classic Scooby-Doo fashion, the gang splits up to look for clues and Johnny's aunt, leading to Shaggy and Johnny encountering Mr. Gardner again. Also in classic Scooby-Doo fashion, we get a good old chase sequence set to a Beatles type beat. Might low-key be more Beach Boys now that I think about it.
Come on, baby, let's take my car to the place where dreams come true. It's a mile off the interstate, and if you want to dance, well, that's there too.
We get a lot of fun little gags and shenanigans incorporating all the characters, and while watching this, it just reiterates what I like about Johnny Bravo so much. There's not a single setting in the world you couldn't put this guy in where he'd feel out of place. For 11 minutes, I fully buy that he exists in the same world as Scooby-Doo in the gang. And it's one of the reasons why I love this episode so much, and low-key, the show as a whole. One way you can tell this episode was written by fans of the show is how they poke fun at some of the more common cliches and tropes from Scooby-Doo's history.
My glasses! I can't see without my glasses!
My glasses. I can't be seen without my glasses.
Scooby, you and Fred check upstairs.
Daphne?
I mean, Scooby, you and Velma check upstairs.
Like, look out below! Why would a ghost be covered in flour?
Easy, silly, because it's not a ghost.
You understand what that dog says?
Even when they catch the gardener and attempt to unmask him, they use this as an opportunity to reference previous Scooby-Doo villains and guest stars from classic episodes, including Don Knotts, who, as I mentioned before, appears on the show as well. That's Barney from The Andy Griffith Show, by the way. You know, the classic 50s sitcom known for starting Ron Howard's career. He made the best Star Wars movie, by the way. My favorite gag, I'm just playing, I've never seen Star Wars. My favorite gag comes from the finding Joe Barbera as one of the masks, and Johnny responds with,
Who's that?
in all actuality though, it was Johnny's aunt Jebediah, who did all of this to actually scare Johnny away. Why? Because she just doesn't like him. Man, I wish I could do that to family members I don't like. You think I want to be hanging around my Uncle Carl? It smell like almonds. Which isn't inherently a bad smell. It's just like, why do you smell like almonds? You know what I mean? Anyway, this episode was a lot of fun, and to top it off, we even get a Speed Bucket cameo that no child watching this would understand. Love to see it. Bravo Dooby-Doo is a 10-minute love letter to Scooby-Doo. It's chock full of references that fans of all ages can appreciate, mostly due to the fact that the staff of the episode were obviously fans that grew up with the show themselves. Not going to bother doing the research, but since this came out about 28 years after the original show dropped, this episode could have legitimately been one of the first pieces of Scooby-Doo media written by people who grew up with the show. Like I said before, it's obvious. Obviously, this isn't the only Bravo episode I'm choosing to talk about though. I still got one more in me. In season 4 of the show, we received yet another Hanna-Barbera crossover, this time being the Flintstones. Worth noting that one of the co-writers of this episode is none other than Craig Bartlett, who, if you aren't aware, is the creator of Hey Arnold. So you know this episode about to be flames. Now, to address the elephant in the room, this episode isn't as complex as Johnny Bravo going back in time to meet Fred Flintstone or vice versa. Instead, for once to go with a somewhat simpler route and just have the entire episode take place in the past, with today's adventure following Johnny's very distant relative named Johnny. Episode takes no time getting started either. Johnny gets hit on the head by a girl he talks to, causing good guy Fred Flintstone to swoop in and save him, as he's quite delirious and stumbling around in ongoing traffic. Some news reporters come in representing the local TV station, don't question it, to interview the two, especially Fred. And during the interview, Johnny says he'll do anything to repay him. One thing I really like about this episode is how they don't skimp out on any Flintstones references or cameos. You'd think such an episode, especially given how much time they have, would only focus on the essentials, perhaps only having Johnny interact with Fred. But no, throughout the entire episode, we get appearances from Fred's boss, Mr. Slate, Barney, Wilma, Betty, Dino, and even Pebbles, who they age up in this episode so Johnny can hit on her. But what is cool is they actually end up using her design from the Pebbles and Bam Bam spin-off show. Fred comes up with a point system that Johnny has to abide by in order to pay him back. Basically, if he does a ton of small tasks worth 5 points, he'll eventually get to 100 points, which is the goal Fred set for him. Once Johnny gets to 100, he's free. Johnny views this as outrageous, but since he gave Fred and everybody watching at home his word, he decides to follow through. For about a few seconds until he realizes it'll be a lot easier if he just comes up with a way to save Fred's life, that way it's even Steven. Shout out Beans. At some point while I was watching this, I just couldn't stop laughing. Not at any joke in particular, but just the fact that I'm really watching Johnny Bravo, or technically an ancestor of his, interact with Fred Flintstone. It's so funny how nonchalant this is, in ways that the last episode wasn't. They didn't treat this episode like a big deal because it wasn't really intended to be. Someone on the staff just decided to make an episode of Johnny Bravo with the Flintstones, and they did it, and it doesn't feel weird at all. It's just kind of funny. Johnny attempts multiple times to save Fred's life, but it's hard to save someone's life when there's nothing to save them from. On the flip side, Fred might be cooked too. See, all of this was just a way for him to trick Johnny into doing his chores while Wilma was out of town. But Wilma has decided to come home earlier than expected, and Johnny just refuses to leave until he repays Fred. Funny enough, they both end up coming up with the same idea. The same one Johnny tried to execute earlier, involving him saving Fred's life. This time, Fred is going to try to create the situation himself though, which theoretically should make things easier. But this is a silly little cartoon, so nothing actually went as planned, of course.
I'm coming for you, Flintstone! Hold on! Here I am. Nope, here. Hold on! Now here! Oh, man, can't you do anything right?
They end up getting saved by Pebbles, but before Johnny can even attempt to repay his debt to her, Fred kicks him out of Bedrock. Yeah, he don't want Johnny around Pebbles, bro. I don't blame him. I will say, this episode wasn't as good as the Scooby-Doo one for a few reasons. The plot is fun, definitely something you can only find in a Johnny Bravo episode, but as time went on, the novelty of seeing Fred and Johnny interact wore off. This episode just also wasn't as funny. Had some good jokes, but I genuinely think that Scooby-Doo episode is just one of the funniest 90s Cartoon Network episodes ever. I mean, those jokes would just hit after hit. This one I feel like didn't take full advantage of the setting it was in. And what I mean by that is part of what makes the weird episodes of Johnny Bravo funny is seeing his reactions to the weirdness around him. Opting to instead just use an ancestor of Johnny for this episode who is used to everything around him because he lives in it just doesn't generate as many good jokes. There's plenty of things to poke fun of with the show too, that they could have turned into Johnny one-liners or gags. The whole driving a car by walking thing, the fact that they somehow still have TV, how they bathe, how they cook food, the fact that dinosaurs are just walking around willy-nilly and other stuff, I'm sure. I'm just not into the Flintstones like that. I'm much more of a Where's Huddles kind of guy nowadays. I just be lying in these videos, bro. I'm not out here watching Where's Huddles. Still a decent episode though. Other Cartoon Network show episodes with Hanna-Barbera include the Dexter episode with Blue Falcon and Dynomutt, the I Am Weasel episode with a whole bunch of Hanna-Barbera characters in a retirement home, and Billy and Mandy even have an episode with Yogi Bear. Not to mention Batman Brave and the Bold has an episode where he teams up with Space Ghost. There are other episodes and small little references as well sprinkled across most Cartoon Network shows, even in the next one we're about to talk about actually, and really it just shows how important these characters were to a generation, because these guys, despite creating cartoons of their own, never stopped showing love to them. And I love that. Y'all ever see a cartoon or TV show reference Zeke and Luther one of these days? You'll know exactly who's behind that.
The city of Townsville is now on Boomerang!
Let's go, ladies!
Oh, goody, goody!
And so, once again, the day is saved thanks to the Powerpuff Girls! Weeknights at 10, only on Boomerang!
I've only ever been mildly interested in the Powerpuff Girls, to be honest. I like the show, but both as a kid and an adult, it was never one of my favorites. I'll tell you what though, y'all ever played that 1v1 fighting flash game from years ago, All Monsters Attack? That was peak cinema right there. You know what show was one of my favorites though? Dexter's Laboratory. And what do you know? These two shows have a crossover episode with each other. Kinda, not really. Let me explain. For those who may not remember, Dexter's Lab's early episodes would often contain 3 7-minute shorts in 1 half-hour block, similar to the olden days of Hanna-Barbera. 2 of them being Dexter's Lab, while the other would be either Dial M for Monkey or the Justice Friends, a parody of the Super Friends, but with bootleg Marvel characters, I guess. Considering the similarities between these shorts and the Powerpuff Girls, technically speaking, this is probably the only crossover that truly made sense for the show, at least when it comes to what was airing in the early 2000s. Plus, with both shows sharing similar staffs, it'd actually be quite easy to make it possible. So they did. Only took 79 episodes. The Powerpuff Girls episode entitled Members Only follows the Powerpuff Girls eagerly awaiting the broadcast presentation of a super special meeting containing all the world's greatest superheroes.
Think they'll invite Krunk this year? Nah, he's just stupid.
This line kind of hurt my soul a little bit because Krunk was always my favorite out of the Justice Friends. I also missed this line the first time I watched this episode and honestly spent most of the time wondering where he was, not gonna lie. We do see a bunch of new superheroes made up for the episode though, with the only characters carrying over from Dexter being Val Howland, Major Glory, and Tiki Torch. All of these characters make up a new team called AWSM, short for Association of World Supermen. My headcanon is that the Justice Friends at some point disbanded and instead decided to create a new team. Despite this though, the girls wonder if they'll be great enough to get an invite to a meeting one of these days. Professor reminds them how many times they've managed to save not just the city of Townsville from evil threats, but also the entire world. Feeling motivated by this, the girls decide to head over there to at the very least introduce themselves. And introduce themselves they do, but unfortunately they're met with laughter from nearly everyone. Not Space Ghost though, that brother's locked in. He knows what's up. He used to team up with Jan back in the day. Man, I gotta cover more cartoons, man. I'm pulling up from deep with these references I didn't even know I had. Major Glory says that the only way to prove they're worthy is by putting the girls through a bunch of tests to determine their strength, agility, and overall battle IQ.
Well, hello. Art thou ready, milady?
Let's do this like Brutus.
What?
Buttercup destroys Big Ben in a strength competition, Bubbles torches email, haha very funny, in a race, while Blossom uses her smarts and freeze breath to stop a bunch of meteors from crashing down into the earth. So, Major Glory has no choice but to give them props. But ultimately they decide that since they're a bunch of girls, they will not be letting them into their clubs.
Ne'er shall these wee pixies defile the sacred house of men with their girlish whimsies. Besides, we don't need no little rugrats cramping our style.
Wrong network, dude. Same voices, though. Also, did y'all know Val Howland was voiced by Tom Kenny and not Greg Sipes? This whole time I just grew up thinking that this man was Beast Boy, bro. I feel like such a fraud. If this is the most Greg Sipes character to not be voiced by Greg Sipes.
You are little girls. You should be at home with your mommy, learning how to cook and clean and blah, 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 whatever women stuff.
So this line delivery made me Google who Major Glory's voice actor is. I had a lot of money on Jeff Bennett, the voice of Johnny Bravo and Dexter's dad. What do you mean this man is voiced by Rob Paulson? Are you kidding me? Yakko Warner, Carl Weezer, Mark Chang from Fairly Odd Parents? Is Rob Paulson low-key the best voice actor of all time? He gotta be top 5 just off of versatility alone. Dude is the Paul George of voice actors. Ain't nothing he can't do. Glory clearly has no idea who the Powerpuff Girls are though, because bro kind of just assumes that they have both a mom and a dad. He starts naming off a bunch of typical household chores that in a lot of households are done by mom. But when they respond by saying that their dad does all of those things on top of the typical dad stuff, Glory is a bit flabbergasted. Regardless, he sends them home. Probably should have waited a little longer to do this though, because almost immediately after they leave, some Walmart brand Megas XLR character comes in causing a whole bunch of chaos. The girls see them getting savagely beaten on live TV and decide to go back to assist, especially thanks to some words of wisdom their dad tells them.
I know they weren't very heroic when they picked on you, but real superheroes don't let what others say keep them from being really super.
Hey, y'all think James Gunn saw this before writing the script of Superman? Just kidding, GOAT. Hit me up. I got ideas for a Cyborg trilogy. The Powerpuff Girls swoop in easily to take out Mr. Mega's XLR. They start doing some crazy things to take this dude down, stuff I ain't ever seen them do before. Since when have they been able to do this?
Bobby, there was some girls and they beat me.
Hey, hold on now. I know for a fact that that was Clancy Brown, aka Mr. Krabs. No way it wasn't. Let me Google it. There we go. Yup, right there. Man, I almost got scared. I thought I was washed for a second. The AWSM thanked the Powerpuff Girls for saving them and even asked them if they could be in their club instead of inviting them to theirs. How the turntables.
And so, once again, the day is saved, thanks to the Powerpuff Girls and the newly formed Society of Associated Puffketeers. Aren't they cute little muffins?
When I started this portion of the video off, I mentioned how I was never the biggest fan of the Powerpuff Girls. But let it be known, it was never because of quality. I've always liked the show. I've always thought it was really good. I just never really watched it as much as some of the other Cartoon Network shows, or even Craig McCracken shows. That being said, every time that I have stumbled across an episode, I instantly get reminded why the show is so well received. This isn't one of the series' best in my opinion, but is still a really solid watch, one that really embodies why the show was made. I am stretching the definition of a crossover a little bit just to include this episode, but that's not something I would have done had I not enjoyed it. As a big Dexter fan, it was actually really nice to see the Justice friends again, especially to see them interact with the Powerpuff Girls. I do wish, however, that we got more of a standard team up with the two teams instead of the girls having to prove themselves. I think Glory acted in character in this episode because dude was always kind of a jerk. I'm not saying this as a real critique per se, it's more so just a preference on what I would have wanted out of an episode like this. Since they went with the 20-minute episode route, it would have been cool if half the episode was them proving themselves and then the other half actually teaming up with the team. But again, I totally understand why they went with this route instead. Solid episode of the series with some good jokes like usual and a nice little message at the end that, like Blossom, wraps it all up in a bow. Now on to the next one. It has been 13 years since Teen Titans Go started releasing episodes. If you are still mad that this show exists, you are a loser, I'm not gonna lie. And look, if anyone should be mad about the show's existence, it should be me. Not only did I grow up watching and enjoying the 2003 show, but the Teen Titans as a whole are my favorite superhero team in all of comics. Not only does this show receive an unnecessary amount of hate online, but the hate that it does receive every now and then serves as the main inspiration for storylines used in episodes. And guess what? It's funny every time because it makes you guys mad every time. One of the negative discourses surrounding the show is how many, for whatever reason, view Teen Titans Go as the thing that killed Young Justice, a show with some similarities to the one Teen Titans Go was based on, and a show that I enjoyed quite a lot, especially in its prime. So of course, naturally the creators decided to rage bait the grown adults upset over this cartoon existing by more or less creating an episode that not only poked fun at the show's nonsensical nature, but also served as a crossover with the aforementioned series Young Justice. And I think this episode is hilarious. If you have an issue with me covering it after all these years, then just skip to the next one, I don't know. Besides, this low-key just gives me an excuse to talk about comics. The Teen Titans Go episode entitled Let's Get Serious premiered on February 26, 2015. When the Teen Titans pull up on their arch rival, the High Five, which in the comics were called the Fearsome Five and featured a slightly different lineup, Robin gets annoyed by how his teammates aren't taking the battle seriously, and instead just keep making fart noises. Fortunately for him, though, it doesn't really matter, because another group of heroes come down to save the day and take down the villains. Now here's the funny thing. The lineup of Young Justice characters that we see consists of Miss Martian, Superboy, and Calder, aka Aqualad, a character who was made up just for Young Justice. But also in that show's lineup are Roy Harper, aka Speedy, Wally West, aka Kid Flash, and Dick Grayson, aka Robin, all of which are characters that not only appear in the original show, but also appear in this show. So I wonder if this universe's team only consists of these three characters, or are there legitimately multiple different sets of these characters just walking around? Considering the type of show Young Justice is, either are very possible, and really there's no use giving it that much thought. But I will say, it is obvious that the writers of this episode pondered over this too, because they purposely used the three characters that wouldn't cause any confusion. Plus, Aqualad and Cyborg have the same voice actor, so it makes sense that they not only include him in this episode, but also give him the only speaking role. A lot cheaper than having to hire multiple voice actors, that's for sure. The Young Justice team, who are actually never referred to as Young Justice on the show, take down the High Five with a little hassle, with Robin and the other characters taking note of how serious they are, which of course is a reference to the different tones of both shows. Once the villains are apprehended, Robin attempts to talk to Aqualad, but it's obvious that he doesn't have interest in giving Bro the time of day. The rest of the conversation is basically Aqualad accusing Robin and the rest of the Titans of not being real heroes, since most of the time they're just goofing off and acting silly, not really taking the duty of being a hero seriously. I just find it really funny that there's a universe out there where the Young Justice are taken more seriously than the Teen Titans, because in the comics, it's not only the exact opposite, but the whole Young Justice generation have basically become afterthoughts. Matter of fact, the original Young Justice comic run just ended up becoming a Teen Titans book after a few years. I don't even think the Young Justice team exists anymore. Like, when was the last time Bart Allen has made an appearance in a comic? Has Bro been in anything recently? Robin and Aqualad go back and forth about how the Titans aren't nearly as bad as he's making it seem, but Calder just isn't having it. and dismisses the conversation. Back at the Titans Tower, it's obvious that Robin has taken the words exchanged in the conversation to heart.
Just thinking about my dead parents. So tragic.
Whoa, what was that?
Keep it light, dude.
Yeah, where'd that come from?
I have the depression now.
Robin starts telling the other Titans that he's tired of people not taking them seriously, so if they want to be taken seriously, their actions are going to have to match that. At the very least, they have to stop treating everything like a joke and instead brood from time to time, especially since they all have things from their past that they can use as inner struggles.
I mean, look at Cyborg. He's half man and half machine.
I know! Pretty cool, right?
No, it's not pretty cool. In fact, it should be tearing you apart.
Ironically, in the comics, the problem is they focus on that a little too much. It's like the only struggle they be given his character, and I hate it. At some point this year, I'll be making a video all about Cyborg and how DC's mistreated my GOAT the past decade or so. But on my second channel, if you're interested, you might want to subscribe. Yo, Beast Boy got a tragic story too. That man's parents died, then he gets adopted by the Doom Patrol, and then most of the Doom Patrol die, then he becomes a Titan, then he starts dating Terra, and then Terra dies. Pretty sure bro lost an eye recently too. Why does DC hate this man so much? I gotta make a video about him too? Anyway, they all decide that maybe Robin is right. And so they all collectively start locking in and turn into what I would imagine the Titans would look like in the absolute universe. And I gotta say, everything that comes after this is just pure comedic gold. For the rest of the episode, they just start talking like they're in super extreme soap operas.
How can I sing when I'm so conflicted? I've been so conflicted and unhappy all this time and never even knew it.
I've never felt more emotionally complex.
If we can't stop them, the world will be destroyed. Forever.
Robin.
Not now, Star. There's too much work to do.
It is very dark.
Of course it's dark. Nighttime is the most serious time to fight crime.
Yeah, but I can't see anything either.
I can use my cybernetics to see, but would I then not lose my humanity?
Robin, there is something I need to tell you.
Not now. We have a job to do.
People give this show a lot of flack even today, but genuinely, I think it's only because of the fact that the first show existed. If this was the very first Teen Titans adaptation, no one would care, because I'll be honest, this genuinely is a funny episode, and there are plenty of other ones like this, but there's so many people that just force themselves to hate it. I'm not saying everyone who dislikes the show is like that, of course. After all, it's by no means a great show, and there's definitely more bad about it than good. But I will be so honest, when this show locks in, there are very few cartoons, especially from around this era, that I think are funnier. The new Teen Titans get a message from the president that the Hive are up to no good again, so they head over to the side of the crime to put a stop to them. This time, seriously. Like genuinely, they start mollywopping these dudes off rip. Why did bro turn into a whole gorilla just to punch this dude? He did not have to do all that. By combining forces to create some serious firepower, the Titans are able to stop the rocket that Hive was going to launch and get commended by Aqualad and the rest of the Young Justice. Well, no, I guess technically it's just Aqualad since he's the only guy that speaks.
Is it too serious? Too serious? You don't understand what it's like to be half machine, half man!
I love when cartoons have moments where two characters voiced by the same voice actor are interacting with each other. The episode ends with the Titans getting into a fierce argument that naturally started over juice and ends up with them splitting up. Robin wonders if this will be the end of the team, but then... yeah, so it turns out Teen Titans Go can actually be pretty funny when you don't have a bunch of man children in your ear crying over a season 6 that was never going to happen. I myself was not a fan of the show when it first came out, and I still don't really care for it that much. But I don't know, man, I just kind of got over it. I moved on. But dude, if you are still mad about this show and you're one of those people that genuinely cannot fathom why such a goofy, silly, harmless, and most importantly cheap to make show is still running after 13 years, that's kind of on you. I'm sorry. No kid's show is worth still getting this upset over. I'm not saying you gotta like it, but for the love of all things true and blue, stop with the petitions to cancel this show meant for 6-year-olds. Get a job, kiss a girl, do something.
No offense.
All that aside, this is one of the strongest episodes of the show, at least from what I've seen. It is totally a big fat reference to the people who are mad over the timing of this show's premiere and the cancellation of Young Justice. Not the people that were just casually mad though, the grown adults who are trashing the show online and sending death threats to Warner Brothers and the creators of it. I love the utilization of the Young Justice characters. Sometimes TV shows will use meta jokes to address online controversy or conversations surrounding a series, but this show addresses everything straight on by literally having Aquaman more or less say, "Hey, Your show wasn't as good as mine. Plus, it genuinely has some really funny jokes. If I, a person who grew up watching the Teen Titans cartoon, absolutely adores Young Justice, currently reads Teen Titans comics, and has them overall as my favorite superhero team, can laugh at this episode and make peace with the show's existence, then there's really no excuse. Anyway, as you can probably tell, I more or less just used this portion of the video to soft launch my eventual Teen Titans video that I want to do later this year. Don't get too excited, it's not a full review of the series overall, it's more so about the impact that the cartoon has had on their brand as a whole, both positive and negative. About time I started using the channel to talk about my actual interest and not bugged. On to the next episode. In 1957, William Hanna and Joe Barbera started releasing original cartoons under the production company name Hanna-Barbera. In 1972, animator and TV writer C.H. Greenblatt, known for writing some of SpongeBob's greatest episodes and creating shows like Chowder and Harvey Beaks, was born. What do you get when you merge Hanna-Barbera with animation superstar C.H. Greenblatt? You get Jellystone, a TV show about Hanna-Barbera characters, but with a little bit of Harvey Beaks energy in there. If you haven't heard of this show, totally understandable, not gonna lie. I know it aired some of its episodes on Cartoon Network and Boomerang from time to time, but the series was primarily an HBO Max exclusive. Matter of fact, it was one of the first things teased for the streaming service. Now you'd think a show with Hanna-Barbera characters, created by one of my favorite cartoonists of all time, would be something that I would have been all over, right? I don't know, I just never got around to watching it. I did, however, make sure that I was present for the big fat crossover event that was heavily teased by the crew of the cartoon entitled Crisis on Infinite Mirths, which of course is a reference to the iconic comic book storyline Secret Wars. To give everyone a brief rundown of the show for those who haven't seen it, Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, Magilla Gorilla, Top Cat, Jabberjaw, and like 85% of the Hanna-Barbera roster of cartoon characters live in the town of Jellystone, a reference to the park Yogi Bear used to steal picnic baskets in. Cindy Bear, in a way, is the Stanley Cheeks of the show, the super genius. At some point while she's monologuing about how she wishes there were other people around her that could appreciate her for who she is, characters from different worlds, or should I say different shows, start popping up out of nowhere, including, but not limited to, Billy from Billy and Mandy, Dee Dee, and Mojo Jojo, all of whom, for one reason or another, have been kicked out of their own universes. I guess we did get that Dexter and Powerpuff Girls crossover. Kinda. Cindy, with the help of Mr. Jinx and Huckleberry Hound, tracks them all down to get to the bottom of this. I got goosebumps while writing that sentence. Cindy uses a memory machine to figure out how each person came to Jellystone, and during this we get glimpses into these other worlds, allowing us to, for the first time in multiple decades, take a look into Dexter's lab. And yes, Dexter actually gets a speaking role.
Computer, initiate trash protocol 73.
Protocol initiated.
We also get a peek into the Billy and Mandy universe.
Hand over the remote, Billy.
No, we're watching the new Justice Friends anime. This is the one where they explore the multiverse.
Oh wow, double Justice Friends representation in this video. I gotta love it. Then lastly, we get a look into the Powerpuff Girls world. The real Powerpuff Girls world, by the way, not the world from that dumb reboot that happened, or that dumb reboot that almost happened. The selection of characters used at first might appear to be weird or even random, but after seeing how each of them were cast out of their respective worlds, it actually makes a lot of sense. All of them were sent away for being problems, some more problematic than others. The only question is why exactly these characters were taken to this world specifically, which we later find the answer to. There's a big time hole in the middle of Jellystone that no one has noticed apparently until now. Thanks to the repeated use of dimension traveling recently, the hole is expanding more and more, and if it continues to be used or even just remain open, it could cause all of reality to go kablooey. Or should I say, kababalooey. He's a Quick Draw McGraw character. JoJo and Cindy, who I guess are falling in love with each other now, cool, both decide to stay at the hole to see if there's a way to close it. But while taking a break, the hole starts to expand and putting more and more beings from the different worlds into the Jellystone universe. This leads to a bunch of new cameos. The mayor from Powerpuff Girls meets Huckleberry Hound, who is the mayor of Jellystone. We also get appearances from Two Stupid Dogs, Truffles, Mordecai, Rigby, Ice King, Cheese, Johnny Bravo, Chowder, just about everybody and their mom.
And also cows!
That is not what cow sounds like, bruh. We got Flapjack in this episode too. Low-key, I would go over more of the plot of this episode, but I kind of just want to keep pointing out all the cameos, not gonna lie.
Mojo Jojo also loves your body.
Oh, well, thank you.
How did you make it?
Well,
Hey! Yeah, Dexter! Okay, we got the dudes from Time Squad pulling up right next to the Eds. Finn, Samurai Jack, the kids next door, Squirrel Boy? Are you kidding me? I forgot he was in this episode. This whole thing is basically a parody and the entire final battle scene from Endgame. We even get a team up with some of the girl characters. Bro, where'd Juniper Lee at? She would have been a perfect addition to the shot. For the second time ever, we get a shot of all the Cartoon Network monkeys, only this time they aren't doing the monkey dance with Johnny Bravo. Blue, Courage, Schnitzel, Robot Jones, I guess we found out what happened to him. Benjamin, Kirby, Tedison, Jake. Look at this shot of the kids next door, bro. This is so peak. Everybody is here. Dude from Evil Con Carne, Wilt, Chicken, Mandark, Plank, Plankton, Cat Dog, Mr. Blake, Pinky Dinky Doo, Luke Ricard and Bob Mute, Joanna Man, Birdman, Chris Anderson, Birdman the Rapper, Harvey Birdman, Banana Man, Zach Martin, Cody Martin, Steve Martin, Maurice Short, Jake Short, Too Short, Shorty McShort Shorts, Kenny Pierre, Mike D. Mills. Yeah, that's about it though. Despite how much is going on in this episode, we do manage to get some really cool moments, some of which feel like long time coming. Like Eduardo from Foster's meeting Ed, Ed, and Eddie. All you're missing is Ed from Camp Lazo, then you really got them all. The Jellystone characters and the Cartoon Network characters put the beef aside after Huckhound and Mare shake hands. Unfortunately for all of them, Mr. CNES himself, Fred Fredberger, clogged up the time hole, meaning that no more random characters from different worlds will be entering this one. So in case anyone was looking for a Class of 3000 cameo,
I have bad news.
all the characters start going back into their respective homes, but not before saying their goodbyes.
Gee whiz, I was totally shipping you two, and now you will never see each other again.
Never thought in a million years I'd hear Dexter say the word shipping, and not in a postal context, but here we are. Everybody goes home, and the episode ends with Mojo and Cindy still being able to communicate with each other, Spider-Verse style. Crisis on Infinite Mirths isn't trying to be anything more than a nostalgia fest filled to the brim with cameos from your favorite childhood cartoons. From the get-go, there's some pretty meta commentary about multiverse stories and how lazy they can get, especially because they're typically only made to get a quick buck. Gotta keep in mind though that Greenblatt was in the industry around the same time as a lot of these guys that created the shows featured in this episode and likely became friends with them and a fan of their shows. Matter of fact, Maxwell Adam, the creator of Billy and Mandy, is the one that directed this episode. I even remember hearing something about all the creators being involved in this episode in some way or another. I say all of that to say that this clearly was not some shameless cash grab, nostalgia moment. Jellystone was on its last leg, so they wanted to have a special moment where all of the classic Hanna-Barbera characters met the classic Cartoon Network characters. While it is still a nostalgia fest, it's a nostalgia fest with love, similar to the OKKO event from years back. This was an exciting moment for the staff just as much as it was for us, so the fans. It's not a great episode, I'm sure the show has better ones, but taking it for what it is, I did have fun with it. We got some really clever character link-up moments out of it, ones that we obviously normally would not get. The fact that a lot of these characters even had speaking lines is impressive. As a lifelong Cartoon Network fan, this episode made me pretty happy. Like I said, it's thin on the story, but when I saw Squirrel Boy on my screen, I nearly shed a tear. They managed to shove a lot in 21 minutes. We even had entire, albeit short, sequences that took place in different worlds, and subplots involving characters. My only real issue with the episode is that I had no interest in the Mojo, Jojo, and Cindy Bear subplot, which you could honestly chalk that up to me just not being totally invested in the Jellystone characters since I've hardly watched the show. It's not as exciting as Crossover Nexus, but it's definitely worth watching if you're a fan of these shows, like yours truly. It also made me think about the old Cartoon Network City bumpers that they used to air in the mid-2000s, where all the characters lived in one town and interacted with each other, and anything that can get me to have those beautiful works of art on my mind is automatically peak in my book. Don't go into this episode of Jellystone expecting a lot, just go in expecting to have a fun time. I know y'all can do it. Mario 2 about to make $1 billion, and that's what y'all love to say about that movie, so...
Come a little closer, we got something new. Cartoon Network is the thing that's gonna keep it cool. Puppy Man back in numbers 1, 2, 3. Please don't get lost, so what you don't believe.
Blossom, Lazo, Lumpus, Will, Shaggy, Scooby-Doo, Eduardo, Ed, Double, Plank, Billy, Eddie, Blue, Coco, Ami, Yumi, Ray Ray, Monroe, Buttercup, Madam Foster, Grandma Dexter, now you know what's up.
Temperature is rising, what's the country so much? The show's all for you, now you're getting more.
Alright, that's the ball game, folks. Trilogy completed. You know the deal. Let me know in the comments which episode in this video you liked the most. This video is kind of big actually, because if it does well, then that means I'd feel more comfortable covering Cartoon Network shows and animation in general on this channel. So if you'd like to see that, maybe give it a thumbs up and a share. Or hype it up, whatever that new feature is. I don't know, I kind of be forgetting about it. And since we're ending the whole trilogy, I might as well ask you, what is your favorite crossover of all time? I'm really curious. And don't say anything Marvel, by the way, that's cheating. If you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like it and hit that subscribe button. Follow me on TikTok, follow me on Letterboxd, follow me on Comic Geeks, join my Patreon if you wanna. I be posting videos early on there and occasionally even exclusive content. And as always, I am Mr. Nostalgia, and I'm out for now.